Namaste everyone. Welcome to our 18th day of the World Interfaith Festival. Today our theme is spirituality and science. Today we have a guest speaker. It's Reverend Massimo Parrino. He's from the Church of Scientology. He's with this church over 35 years. His role is a public relations director of the Ron Hubbard Foundation and responsible for the Eastern United States. His purpose is to make known the life and achievements of the founder of Scientology. He is also responsible for 3 museums in Washington, Bay and Elizabeth, New Jersey, where Ron Hubbard made some of the greatest breakthroughs about Dianetics and Scientology. Without delay, I'm going to invite Reverend Massimo Parrino. Floor is for you.
Hello to everybody. Thank you very much for having me, Guru. It's always a pleasure. And I have to deeply thank you for the opportunity to speak and provide information. It's very true that all over the world there is a great curiosity about Dianetic Scientology. And it's very nice to be here, and answer to any question that people may have. And actually, Scientology, it's the major, one of the major religion that born in the last century. And today, Scientology is present basically in all countries with 11,000 churches, missions, and groups all over the world. And the participation from all kind of people from all background, all kind of religion, they discover in Scientology information very useful to apply in their community and to help their own congregation, both religious people or lay people, obviously. So today we are going to present very in a short way, the life of L. Ron Hubbard and how he did his research that wind up in the technology called as the body of knowledge called Scientology and Dianetics. I think that is important just at the beginning, clarify at least these 2 words because maybe the people don't know. The word Dianetics means through mind, is a science of the mind, and the book was published 9 May on 1950, and was basically just a science of the mind, and contain a precise therapy that anybody can learn and apply in their life to improve their own mind. After 2 years of implementation, application of the science Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard discovered that the real subject of his research was not the mind, but was spirit. And that happened in 1952. And at that point, he cannot use anymore the word Dianetics because it was very limited to the field of the mind. So he chose a new word, Scientology, that means knowing how to know, or the study of the knowledge, because the subject was obviously very broad. We are talking about life in its entirety, and Scientology is a religion, obviously, because the subject of Scientology is the spirit, you as a spirit. And it's very interesting how we are going to see with some video the viewpoint of L. Ron Hubbard about his philosophy, his discovery, and finally we are going to see a video that is called "It is Possible to Be Happy," which provide a very practical way how to be happy. So I would love at this point to start immediately with the first video that is a summary, just 10 minutes, is a summary of the life of L. Ron Hubbard. Please, Guru.
He was born Lafayette Ronald Hubbard on March 13, 1911 in Tilden, Nebraska. He spent his formative years in a rough and tumble Helena, Montana, where he rode barely broken range broncs at the age of 3.5. As his mother was that rarity of her time, a thoroughly educated woman, he was also reading well beyond his years, philosophy, science, and the pillars of Western literature, all in an effort to satisfy a rare and abiding curiosity. As his father was a United States naval officer, he was further afforded a then rare opportunity to travel, crisscrossing America's diverse communities in the teens of the 20th century. At the age of 12, he entered the Boy Scouts, first leading his troop to victory in a regional scout advancement competition, then representing scouting to United States President Calvin Coolidge. But it was his 21 merit badges that most distinguished L. Ron Hubbard at this juncture of his life. For just days beyond his 13th birthday, he became the youngest Eagle Scout in American history. It was another distinction entirely, however, that set him on the first leg of his life's course. Specifically, when an American naval officer who had studied under Sigmund Freud introduced young L. Ron Hubbard to the theories of psychoanalysis. Although left with many unanswered questions, here was the moment when his enduring interest in unraveling the mysteries of the human mind was born. His father's naval career provided the next avenue of inquiry, in particular, a Far East assignment allowing the 16-year-old L. Ron Hubbard a chance to visit Asia. It was land still steeped in mystery and rarely seen by Westerners, yet pursuing very fundamental questions on the origins of man and the ultimate source of life. He trekked more than 250,000 miles through India, China, Japan, and the Philippines, into many remote cultures and much arcane wisdom, including Vedic hymns at the root of mankind's oldest beliefs. It was also through these travels he gained entrance to forbidden Buddhist lamaseries in China's western hills, and there witnessed wonders beyond any known scientific explanation. Shortly after his return to the United States in 1929, he entered George Washington University as an engineering student. It was a rigorous curriculum of scientific methodology, the very tools he needed to examine human thinking with unerring accuracy. Here, too, was one of America's earliest classes on nuclear physics, through which he embarked on yet another investigatory trail, this one to isolate a postulated life source, theoretically detectable in small energy particles. Yet laboratory experimentation was by no means all that occupied his university days. Beginning in June of 1932, he organized the first of several expeditions to remote and primitive lands. Initially, a 5,000-mile voyage into the Caribbean, where he mingled with a people predating Columbus by at least 10 centuries. Next came Puerto Rico, where he not only conducted one of the island's first complete mineralogical surveys, but also studied yet another ancient culture, deep within the hinterland. Then, taking his thirst for adventure to the skies, he became America's 385th licensed glider pilot. Heralded by newspapers of the day as Flash Hubbard for his aerial antics, while as a barnstorming sensation of powered flight across rural America, he mixed with still another slice of society. Then, leaving university in the depths of the Great Depression, he began his career as a professional author, turning his true-to-life exploits into high-action tales for magazines of the day. Tales of adventure, tales of intrigue, science fiction, fantasies, westerns, and even the occasional romance. As an undisputed legend of American pulp fiction, L. Ron Hubbard wrote it all. Indeed, with more than 300 novels and novelettes to his credit, so prodigious was his output, he was eventually authoring stories under 15 pen names, and so filling whole magazines with his work. He was also scripting matinee blockbusters for Hollywood, and otherwise leaving an indelible stamp as an author whose career would span 50 years. Then, just as exploits fueled story ideas, so his stories funded still more exploration, until he was regularly crisscrossing the country to live extreme adventures and mix with people as far afield as Native American tribes along the Alaskan Panhandle. In recognition of discoveries in the field, he was further honored with a place in the prestigious and invitation-only Explorers Club, and so went on to captain expeditions beneath 3 club flags. But the real point of such adventures was the fact he was mixing with life to fathom life. The first decisive breakthrough came in 1937, when he isolated the single common denominator between all living things, a dynamic principle of existence. It was recorded in a manuscript entitled Excalibur, and presented the basis for all future research into the mind and source of life. But then came an interruption to that research, the Second World War. As he had since earned a rare Master Mariner's license to captain any vessel in any ocean, he received numerous recommendations for commission as a naval officer. In particular, he was described discreet, loyal, honest, and without peer in the art of getting things done. So it was Lieutenant L. Ron Hubbard commanded warships in both the Atlantic and Pacific. He was highly decorated for duties under fire, and ended his service in a military hospital where he was treated for wounds suffered in combat. But that's also where he embarked on his final road of discovery. Working with injured servicemen who had failed to recover despite intensive medical care, he began employing all he had learned through the previous decades, spiritual principles from the East, as well as scientific methodologies from the West. What he then discovered were mental factors inhibiting recovery and preventing medicines from taking effect. And when in fact those mental blocks were addressed, the medicine began to work, and patients swiftly returned to health. He then continued refining procedures on people from all walks of life, actors and writers in Hollywood's film community, street gang members whom he treated as a special officer with the LAPD, even deeply troubled patients at a Georgia institution. And so it was, having developed a workable technology of the mind, he authored a definitive text on the subject, a work detailing all underlying theory, discoveries, and techniques. That book was Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, published on May 9th, 1950. It sparked a storm of popular enthusiasm and immediately hit the New York Times bestseller list for 26 consecutive weeks. As such, it was the biggest selling book on the mind ever written, and remains so today. Contained within was the discovery of the reactive mind, the hidden source of nightmares, unreasonable fears, upsets, and insecurity. Yet L. Ron Hubbard never considered Dianetics an end to his research, but rather a stepping stone to the discovery and isolation of that long elusive life source. And indeed, the techniques of Dianetics provided the means by which practitioners soon began discovering past lives. Pressing application and research even further came the accomplishment of what is known as exteriorization, demonstrating the spirit was indeed separable from the body and mind. The Scientology religion was born. Thereafter, L. Ron Hubbard delved ever deeper into the spiritual nature of man, documenting his discoveries in thousands of recorded lectures, articles, and books. While to present those discoveries, he literally circumnavigated the globe, and so churches of Scientology opened on 4 continents, headquartered at his long-term residence in southern England. Through ensuing years, L. Ron Hubbard continued advancing the subject until his passing in 1986. His legacy comprises tens of millions of published words and 3,000 recorded lectures, while with over 250 million copies of his books and lectures in circulation, he has inspired a movement spanning all continents and all cultures. So to those who would ask, What kind of man could have founded the only major religion of the 20th century? The answer is simple enough. A man who lived life from the top down and the bottom up. A man who had seen much wisdom and great suffering. A man who spent a quarter of a century bridging the gap between East and West, science and religion. A man such as L. Ron Hubbard.
Thank you very much for this. And I would like to add a few things about this. Oh, by the way, thank you for the people that are present. Richard, Yogi Ramesh, Sal, and others. Aaron Hubbard was a professional in more than 20 different fields. He was a photographer, was a filmmaker, was a biologist, explorer. And today, just one of the fields that he was professional as a writer is the most translated and published author of all times, with 1,084 works published. And today there are more than 350 million copies of his work in circulation. So if there is any question about it, I would love to open the floor.
I have a question. I heard about his name and the mission from India through my uncle. My uncle was a monk and a psychology visiting professor in America and Europe. So when we had a conference, he mentioned about that's the way I heard about this. But when I came here, I heard so many negative things about him and the organization. How this happened, I cannot understand. I know in the Europe and America, people are more open to a lot of things. Sometimes they are close to certain things. That I know, but for a science student, I want to know what is it. I have that kind of thirsty. So, what do you feel about that? Why people talk against it, or why people cannot accept? But when I look at the history, I just went through all the history. How is it? I didn't see any crime against him as he's raping anybody or smoking marijuana or drugs. I didn't hear any of the stories. Usually, that's the first thing people put on religious leaders to bring down sexual scandal. I didn't hear any of that stuff. Or some other things was not that important for me. So, what do you like to explain about that?
It's very simple. Elron Hubbard, before to remember that Elron Hubbard was a researcher, he's a scientist. He was writing about his discovery. As any other older, previous researcher like Isaac Newton, Galileo Galilei, they study something, they provide their own findings. And before Elron Hubbard, before he wrote the book Dianetics, he offered for free all his research to the American Medical Association and to the American Psychiatry Association. He gave all his research for free. And they say, we are not interested, which is quite, strange. How you are not interested in discovery about the mind that can improve the capability of the people to live better. So they refused the offer of Elron Hubbard. So at that point, Elron Hubbard has no other chance than to publish the book. And many years later, he discovered why immediately the day one that he published the book, immediately there was attacks on him. But he didn't understand at the very beginning why of these attacks. And the reason why behind was just money. Because, if someone discovers something that changed completely the perception and the knowledge at that moment, about a subject, in this case, the mind. So the psychiatry, at that time in 1950, they were receiving billions of dollars for research the mind. So now the psychiatry, how they can justify to the government to receive billions of dollars when a person alone made the, solve the problem of the mind. So they cannot ask for more money because someone already discovered that. And this is the basic reason of all the attacks against Dianetics at the very beginning. Again, I wanted to, because this is very interesting, he offered his discovery for free to the main and most important association at that time, which is the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatry Association, to use that knowledge to help people. And they refused. And they started to attack Ronaba because Dianetics was extremely popular amongst the people, because the people discover reading the book that they can apply that information to make themselves better. And after now 70 years, believe it or not, the reason behind the attacks on the Church of Scientology are always the same. But it's interesting that every single year, more than 4 million people reach out to the Church of Scientology because they are curious. They want to know a little bit more about it. But that is basically the basic of the controversy.
I was discussing with a few people yesterday, then a few of them mentioned that Scientology is only focusing on material world, and they have so much money, so they can do whatever they want. Do you have any comment for that?
The fact that someone said that there is concentrate or focus on materialist is absolutely 180-degree opposite, because in Scientology we are studying the spirit and in the very its essence, and we are only interested to make known this knowledge to the people. One thing that I wanted to say is that my position, I consider myself very fortunate, because I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm not trying to preach anybody or convert anybody by any means. My only interest is that to inform the people that knowledge exists regarding the mind, regarding the spirit, and regarding life. Obviously, you need an organization in order to disseminate this knowledge. There is no way that you can disseminate any kind of knowledge without an organization. But it's important to understand that L. Ron Hubbard is not the founder of the Church of Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was interested to discover things about life and about the spirit, and put this knowledge available to anybody. The Church of Scientology was established by students that were studying Scientology at that time, and they found that they needed to have an organization in order to disseminate this information. However, in the last 70 years, the Church of Scientology has thought in any in any part of the world, and won every single situation that we were involved. And today we are expanding constantly, because the people are curious and they wanted to know more about themselves. This is the purpose of everybody, to know better themselves and how to live a better life. That's all.
I have a question. This is about the spirituality and the science. So why he made the word church? That is only for a particular religious group, right? The word church. Why he didn't make a mosque of Scientology or temple of Scientology?
This question is very easy to answer, because obviously he has an experience from his family, Christian, that area. So, however, the word church means just a place where people that believe in something, they gather together. That is the basic definition of church, and that can be applied for anything. It's just a place where the people gather together and, that believe in something, they share together specific things, and they gather together. That's all the definition of church, no more than that.
I know you're from Italy. As an Italian, so very strong Christian background. How did you end up with the Scientology group?
Great question. Thank you very much, Guru, for this question, because I can introduce in a few minutes my personal experience. Since I was 5 years old, for some reason, my purpose in life was to help people. That was my purpose in life. And but in the same time, I grew up, and I study. I am, for example, I am an electrician of ships. I am an official of an electrician. And I have a very frame of mind, a very practical frame of mind. So my viewpoint is I can read something and I have to apply, very simple. So when I read a lot of books regarding how to help people, that I was interested. And one day I had in my mind, in my hand, the book Dianetics. And as I did for many other books before Dianetics, I just read and tried to apply to see if it works. And when I discovered that worked 100%, I joined the Church of Scientology, because that was my purpose, to have tools to help people. That was my purpose. And that is the only reason because I joined. For me, Scientology is not something in which I have to believe. It's just a tools, a pathway that I'm using to help myself and to help others. And actually, that is the viewpoint of Ronaba. You will see in the video later that the viewpoint of Abba was, please don't believe to anything that I wrote. He said that several times. Please don't believe to anything that I wrote. You have to observe by yourself, check by yourself, and Scientology is true only to the degree of your observation, not because I wrote something. And I think that at this point, Guru, will be nice to show the video, my philosophy, which provided his own viewpoint directly.
Yeah, I asked Richard Jordan if you have any question or comments.
Well, very enlightening. It just goes to show that criticism usually comes from those who are ignorant of the background. So my question, Massimo, and thank you so much for this video. And then I have to leave to go back to my students. I came specifically only for this presentation. I have been many times to the Explorers Club. And I am astonished that L. Ron Hubbard he has a number of citations. And do you have just a couple of brief comments perhaps on his relation to the Explorers Club? I had no idea. It's on 70th Street in Manhattan, as you know.
By the way, they honor L. Ron Hubbard in the Explorers Club headquarters with a stone on the floor. They put the name of L. Ron Hubbard inside the Explorers Club. So basically, L. Ron Hubbard was interested to understand men. And for that reason, he traveled all over the world. He studied 21 different races. Because he said, the only way for you to understand life, you have to live life. You have to I say in English, rub the hell bones, with any kind of people in order to understand what man is. So he traveled the world, exactly. So he traveled the world, studied the people, not in an ivory tower, but with the people. He lived with bandits, with the headhunters. He lived with all kinds of people in order to understand what life is. You cannot understand life, stay in an office and try to figure out what the life is. That is impossible. You have to live with people. And one of the last exploration he did in the Mediterranean, it was one of the most important for the outcome of that research regarding the past civilization and why, for example, we have wars today. And it's very, very interesting. Maybe I can share with you personally later some of this information, but was recorded that exploration in a book called Mission into Times. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But actually, yeah, I hope that I answer your question. Is just he was research and he has to travel to research and find out.
As a question, I see one of the new person, Marla. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm very interested in what you're talking about. Generally, I was interested in the idea of culture and conflict. I was surprised about the L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology, but I kind of, have been experiencing that myself and traveling the world and looking at different cultures and experiencing. I think that's sort of essential. And so, it's a relief. And I agree that the theology is different than the religion, and the organized religion itself of Scientology and the Church of L. Ron Hubbard and itself has had conflicts. But, apart from that, the philosophy, I read Dianetics as a young person and I was, blown away actually with his open concepts. So I would actually like to hear more of what you have to say about this idea of conflict and culture and a way of the solution of helping and coming to some solution and a resolution. And after 70 years, where have his successes been, in that regard?
Oh my gosh, Marla, what you said is really touched my heart. Really, thank you very much. And actually, it's funny because of the same thing that I was saying to Richard before, that discovery about why the conflict in humankind there is a scientific reason of why that. And he discovered that thing during that exploration in the 60s, and was recorded in a video that we are not going to show today, but I would love to send you the link about this discovery because it is one of the most important discovery, and exists a law, and he called that law the third party law, and is the basic cause of any conflict between one person to another, and it is also the basic for wars. So it's very interesting what you just said, and I would love to provide you this information.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your question.
Okay, thank you, Marla. So I'll do the next video. Let us see.
Yes.
The subject of philosophy is very ancient. The word means the love, study, or pursuit of wisdom, or of knowledge of things and their causes, whether theoretical or practical. All we know of science or of religion comes from philosophy. It lies behind and above all other knowledge we have or use. For long regarded as a subject reserved for halls of learning and the intellectual, The subject, to a remarkable degree, has been denied the man in the street. Surrounded by protective coatings of impenetrable scholarliness, philosophy has been reserved to the privileged few. The first principle of my own philosophy is that wisdom is meant for anyone who wishes to reach for it. It is the servant of the commoner and king alike, and should never be regarded with awe. Selfish scholars seldom forgive anyone who seeks to break down the walls of mystery and let the people in. Will Durant, the modern American philosopher, was relegated to the scrap heap by his fellow scholars when he wrote a popular book on the subject, The Story of Philosophy. Thus brickbats come the way of any who seek to bring wisdom to the people over the objections of the inner circle. The second principle of my own philosophy is that it must be capable of being applied. Learning locked in mildewed books is of little use to anyone, and therefore of no value unless it can be used. The third principle is that any philosophic knowledge is only valuable if it is true or if it works. These three principles are so strange to the field of philosophy that I have given my philosophy a name: Scientology. This means only knowing how to know. A philosophy can only be a route to knowledge. It cannot be knowledge crammed down one's throat. If one has a route, he can then find what is true for him. And that is Scientology. Know thyself, and the truth shall set you free. Therefore, in Scientology, we are not concerned with individual actions and differences. We are only concerned with how to show man how he can set himself or herself free. This, of course, is not very popular with those who depend upon the slavery of others for their living or power. But it happens to be the only way I have found that really improves an individual's life. Suppression and oppression are the basic causes of depression. If you relieve those, a person can lift his head, become well, become happy with life. And though it may be unpopular with the slave master, it is very popular with the people. Common man likes to be happy and well. He likes to be able to understand things, and he knows his route to freedom lies through knowledge. Therefore, since 1950, I have had mankind knocking on my door. It has not mattered where I have lived or how remote. Since I first published a book on the subject, my life has no longer been my own. I like to help others and count it as my greatest pleasure in life to see a person free himself of the shadows which darken his days. These shadows look so thick to him and weigh him down so that when he finds they are shadows and that he can see through them, walk through them, and be again in the sun, he is enormously delighted. And I'm afraid I am just as delighted as he is. I have seen much human misery. As a very young man, I wandered through Asia and saw the agony and misery of overpopulated and undereducated lands. I have seen people uncaring and stepping over dying men in the streets. I have seen children less than rags and bones. And amongst this poverty and degradation, I found holy places where wisdom was great, but where it was carefully hidden and given out only as superstition. Later, in Western universities, I saw a man obsessed with materiality, and with all his cunning, I saw him hide what little wisdom he really had in forbidding halls and make it inaccessible to the common and less favored man. I have been through a terrible war and saw its terror and pain uneased by a single word of decency or humanity. I have lived no cloistered life and hold in contempt the wise man who has not lived and the scholar who will not share. There have been many wiser men than I, but few have traveled as much road. I have seen life from the top down and the bottom up. I know how it looks both ways. And I know there is wisdom and that there is hope. Blinded with injured optic nerves and lame with physical injuries to hip and back at the end of World War II, I faced an almost non-existent future. My service record states, this officer has no neurotic or psychotic tendencies of any kind whatsoever. But it also states, permanently disabled physically. And so there came a further blow. I was abandoned by family and friends as a supposedly hopeless cripple and a probable burden upon them for the rest of my days. I yet worked my way back to fitness and strength in less than 2 years, using only what I knew and could determine about man and his relationship to the universe. I had no one to help me. What I had to know, I had to find out. And it's quite a trick studying when you cannot see. I became used to being told it was all impossible, that there was no way, no hope. Yet I came to see again and walk again. And I built an entirely new life. It is a happy life, a busy one, and I hope a useful one. My only moments of sadness are those which come when bigoted men tell others all is bad, and there is no route anywhere, no hope anywhere, nothing but sadness and sameness and desolation, and that every effort to help others is false. I know it is not true. So my own philosophy is that one should share what wisdom he has. One should help others to help themselves. And one should keep going despite heavy weather, for there is always a calm ahead. One should also ignore catcalls from the selfish intellectual who cries, "Don't expose the mystery, keep it all for ourselves. The people cannot understand." But as I have never seen wisdom do any good kept to oneself, and as I like to see others happy, and as I find the vast majority of the people can and do understand, I will keep on writing and working and teaching so long as I exist. For I know no man who has any monopoly upon the wisdom of this universe. It belongs to those who can use it to help themselves and others. If things were a little better known and understood, we would all lead happier lives. And there is a way to know them and there is a way to freedom. The old must give way to the new. Falsehood must become exposed by truth. And truth, though fought, always in the end prevails.
That's very, very interesting one. I see a person joining in the Navy and going to the war, losing, getting injury, and everybody left him, and there's nowhere to go. He's stuck, and he is using that situation rather than going and having drugs. He's entering in the area to study and writing, try to teach people. That's a very impressive one. I remember Swami Bhuva was crippled. When he was 11 years old, the family put him in the funeral fire. Put the fire, suddenly body started moving, everybody ran away. Then one of the monks took him out, taught him yoga and all that stuff. Then he became a monk, travel around the globe, teaching yoga, promoting Hinduism. And he ended up in New York. And he lived at the palace of Iran Shah for 7 years. That's not normal those days. So people can change their life anytime. So we don't know. We cannot just simply criticize somebody if we don't know what is the real stuff. That thing I felt. What happened to Reverend Massimo? I think he lost the connection. He's coming back. So that's very positiveness we can see from him. Even though going through the negative life, changing that negativity to the positive. It's a very, very impressive one. Yes, Massimo?
Oh my goodness.
One instrument. Other one should be in the mute.
Okay. There is some strange. 1 second.
Are you using computer and the phone?
Yes,
So keep
okay.
one in mute, then it's fine.
1 second. I close it. Okay. So because the theme of today is spirituality and science, I would love now to show 3 very short video that show how Elron Hubbard was doing his scientific research. We have to remember that Elron Hubbard was trained as an engineering, as a scientist, and in the same time he had all this incredible experience with the wisdom of the East that he lived, when he was very young. So I think that it's very appropriate, Guru, right now to show this 3 short video about how he was discovering things.
Okay.
When I got to college, I made a certain series of tests and experiments and found out that poetry, of all things, seemed to be poetry in every language to everybody else. That's a very peculiar thing. Why is it that poetry is that musical rhythm which communicates? Why should it communicate? You read somebody a poem in Japanese, he can't speak Japanese, he says, he says, that's poetry. Why should he understand poetry in Japanese? And this puzzled me. What is in the brain, the head, the makeup of man that makes him recognize poetry? So I tested it all out on a kinetophotometer. Very elaborate physical experiments. And found out that poems in Japanese, poems in English, I got a hold of an Indian student, got him to come over and recite some Indian poetry, all made the same curve on a Koenig pentameter. And I said, isn't this wonderful? We have discovered something, the aesthetic of language, which records on a physical instrument. And isn't this beautiful? And the people who know all about it over there in the psychology department had better know that you can test all this on a Koenig pentameter. And at that moment, I fell off the cliff. I went over for the first time to the psychology department and found out for the first time in my life that there isn't anybody who knows all about it on Earth. That was a shock to me. You see, I'd never seen a mystic do anything but practice with confidence. And I had never seen an engineer express anything but confidence and knowledge of his subject when he was building railroad bridges. And I was used to a world where men were expert, where they were positive, where they could get results, make an effect, and knew their business. And I had just put a foot in a morass, which not only didn't know, but didn't care to know, really. In other words, here was a segment of human knowledge which was letting us all down. And at that moment, I got very interested.
So next one.
Yeah.
Along about 1938, I had studied quite a bit about the mind. I made myself enough cash so that I could sit back for a short time and be very intensive on this subject. I carried forward a series of biological experiments and discovered, oddly enough, that a cell can be taught on down its generations. Very crude biology. But I found out that you could teach cell A something, such as a puff of cigarette smoke contains nicotine and is deadly and will make you sick. And several generations later, we have educated the cellular line to flee from steam, which contains no nicotine. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Cellular memory. The cells could remember. This was enough for me. I started to add it up. I said, what is the common denominator of existence? We came up at that time with the dynamic principle of existence as survive. Well, however else it went together and whatever else I did about it, I wrote a book at that time, a book called Excalibur.
And the next one, Marla, for your knowledge, is very interesting because it is basically the final experiment before Dianetics.
But at the end of the war, I spent about a year in the hospital. I had the misfortune of standing in the wrong place. It's always your fault, you know. You're standing in the wrong place at the wrong moment, and something else arrives and tries to occupy the same space. It's always embarrassing. But during that last year, I studied at the Oak Knoll Naval Hospital Library. And I found out by the simple expedient of taking off one collar ornament, I became an MD, you see. Very simple. And they don't let anybody in a medical library except doctors, you see, of the MD class. But by stepping up to the desk with only one collar ornament, you see, on the left side, and for a couple of bucks, having a Marine on crutches come by and say, "Good morning, doctor." I was able to get in a year's study at the medical library. I studied the endocrine system and studied this and studied that and dreamed up a few experiments of one kind or another. I wrecked the whole research project, by the way. There was a doctor with the improbable name of Yankiewicz. And Yankiewicz was conducting a series of studies on prisoners of war, and this Yankiewicz was trying to fix them up with testosterone and other endocrine compounds. And all of his records were available, and he was keeping very, very sharp metabolism tests and other things to show the results of endocrine fluids and extracts on prisoners or something. Well, it's very simple. All I had to do was get the name of one of his series, take him out in the park, sit down, and do beginnings of Dianetics and Scientology on him, and then have him go in and take his metabolism test. Yankiewicz said to me one day, he says, "Good heavens," he said, "something has gone wrong with these records." He said, "The cases just aren't turning out right. Some of these fellows are getting well." Well, I found out by those experiences that function monitors structure, that thought monitors matter, and that matter does not monitor thought. Thought was boss.
So I think that is very interesting, for the people to understand that anything that L. Ron Hubbard wrote in his book and from his research came from experiment actually, It's not something that he woke up one day and made up a theory about something. No, there was a scientific experiment behind. And before to go to the last video, which is called "It is possible to be happy." I'm sorry. I wanted to underline the fact that even the next video show what he discovered, that is something practical that people can use to improve their own life. It doesn't matter what the people believe. This is not a matter of belief, this is a matter of knowledge. And it doesn't matter if you are Hindu, if you are Buddhist, if you are Christian or Catholic, or you do not have any kind of belief in religion. It doesn't matter. Because as a human being, there is something that is common to every single person on the planet Earth, and maybe in the universe. And that is knowledge. Knowledge is something that you can experience regardless your belief. If, for example, the gravity law, that is a good example. The gravity law is valid for anybody. If we have on the top of the roof, we have a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Hindu, and Christian person, and walk over the edge of the roof, all of them will crash on the floor, because that is the law. So whatever Ron Hubbard discovered are laws of life and can be experienced by anybody. And Marla before was talking about the reason behind the conflict of people. And today we are looking conflict all over constantly. It seems that the standard, quote unquote, the standard for men is conflict, and just to tell you again, Marla, there is a specific laws behind why conflicts happen. And when you know that laws, at that point, you will be able to handle any kind of conflict, whatever will be the smallest conflict between a wife and a husband, you know, up to why two countries, like in this day, Russia and Ukraine, they wanted to do a war, you know, doesn't make any sense, obviously, you know, but there is a behind, there is a laws and the reason why that happened. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because this is where I have a little difficulty, because I don't have to have knowledge of gravity to experience it. So this hidden law of what conflict is and how to resolve it, it should be like gravity if it's part of my human existence. I shouldn't have to have knowledge. Now, in Kabbalistic systems, Keter, Hakma, Bine, Gevura, these forces are knowledge. So many systems believe that knowledge is the light that comes in. It is knowledge. And you can have, you know, understanding and you can have wisdom. Together they can make knowledge, right? So those things are outside of our intellect. They're sort of what the information of the universe brings to us. In fact, our endocrine system is how we get that knowledge in many ways, right?
Actually, prana is controlling our entire system.
Yes.
All the physical body is only a part of this body.
Right.
Prana go beyond. A lot of time by birth, children get the blockage in their pranic system, and very hard to bring it back unless they do sadhana. Sadhana is a spiritual practice, rigorous practice to cleanse entire system. So seems like he got a vision to find out what is the spirituality, what is the God. His mind is going in that direction, and he's testing different ways to find out and explain to people. A lot of them people cannot understand when a master is talking about spirituality. They cannot get it. Like a 1 month old child cannot eat a pie of pizza, you know. So it will take time. So
But
step by step.
don't you think we're beyond that? We're in the 21st century. We're beyond being children about knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah,
We are
still,
a mature society, and we don't have to be treated like children.
no, still problem is there's a group of people to block people to develop themselves. Just look at the corona, right? Everybody, just COVID-19 situation. People only talk about the vaccine. I never heard people are talking how to improve the immunity. Basic stuff is how to improve the immunity. When you have immunity 100%, nothing can hit on you. I went to a person who is severely facing corona crisis. I went there, gave some herbal items. He had a corona. I went there, spent time there, left. I didn't get any corona. Okay, this is my personal experience. So we're supposed to be in a different level now. In 21st century, the technology is very high, higher than earlier. Knowledge is everywhere. Anybody can get knowledge through books or internet, vast area. But the maturity of the people may be not developed because still the greediness, jealousy is still there. We don't want other people to develop. Those who have the knowledge, we don't want to share it. You look around the globe. Everybody want to attack on the other country or other culture, and we say we are the great.
I don't see that.
I see that because
on a governmental level, I see on a geopolitical level, but on a one-to-one, wherever, I mean, this is where in L. Ron Hubbard's video, when he talked about traveling through Asia and stepping over people and people uncivilized without getting access to information and knowledge. I've traveled to places that are extremely primitive. that people make their homes out of the bark and out of caves, but they have a sense of self. They have a sense of honor and dignity. They don't have to know Western Aristotelian philosophy to have a sense of knowledge about the earth. In fact, I'm taking a course out of Yale right now that looks at nature and religion, right? And these indigenous cultures that gain knowledge from environment, from the earth, from the animal cultures, the animistic cultures that see themselves in animals and plants. And so I think there's wisdom there. I think there's wisdom there.
I think that Marla, is very interesting what you just said, because there is one lecture, I don't remember which one, that Eronaba said, I curse myself in any language that I knew, because he said, I return to the Western world where there is not intellectual wisdom. And he said that despite that situation of misery that he observed in 1920, 1930 and stuff like that, he said that there was an incredible, beautiful wisdom in the East that doesn't exist in the West. But however, he always said that there is a truth in both in the wisdom of the East and some truth in the scientific knowledge of the West. The point was how to merge these two knowledge to create something practical that man can use all the time. Another point that we saw in the previous video, and that is my position, that I do not need to discuss with anybody, try to convince that the things is in one way or in another way. I don't care, I'm here just to tell the people, hey, there is something new that was discovered about that specific subject. Now it's up to you if you want to read and apply and check by yourself if it works or not. It's very, very simple, And obviously there is, in Italy we say ritardo culturale. I don't know exactly how can be translated in English, but I think so it could be, cultural lag or cultural delay, when Galileo discovered the things that he discovered, it took 400 years before to be accepted, and many people, like for example, William Harvey, when he discovered the blood circulation, the doctors at that time, they do not want to believe on what he discovered. And the people constantly die because they wanted to use the new discovery, So that is part of the evolution of mankind, and takes time to discover and accept new discovery. That is normal.
And that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, but true. Change is difficult to absorb.
Exactly.
But I'm inspired by self-healers. I'm inspired. Maybe Guru, you can talk. Iyengar yoga and how he healed himself and developed a way of a practice that healed, and people then, learned from that. And those people inspire me, like L. Ron Hubbard develop a way to self-heal.
On Monday we have a discussion with some doctors. So they are yoga practitioners too. So I just talked to 3 of them. We are going to have a discussion. So every day we are putting different subjects and different theologies, different ideas. And this is a way, because we want to keep it more open. So good to have a healthy discussion. The people can educate. We are bringing people from different countries and cultures. And see what is the best thing for each person to develop or make.
Absolutely.
Traveling
Absolutely.
from one state to another state. It's a permanent traveling. We are not going to stop anywhere. So always we are growing different ways. Yes.
Yeah, you remember Guru before, Eronaba said, you cannot cram in the throat of people knowledge. No, the people has to be free to discover by themselves. They have to be self-determined if they wanted to know something. You cannot force anybody to believe in something or to know something. It's a own decision. And if there is not that freedom, there is nothing else. You know. So now at this point, because I think that it's good to show that video, is it possible to be happy?
Okay.
Is it possible to be happy? A great many people wonder whether or not happiness even exists in this modern, rushing world. Very often, an individual can have $1 million, he can have everything his heart apparently desires, and is still unhappy. We take the case of somebody who's worked all his life, he's worked hard. He's raised a big family. He's looked forward to that time of his life when he at last could retire and be happy and be cheerful. Have lots of time to do all the things he wanted to do. And then we see him after he's retired, and is he happy? No. He's sitting there thinking about the good old days when he was working hard. Our main problem in life is happiness. The world today may or may not be designed to be a happy world. It may or may not be possible for you to be happy in this. And yet, nearly all of us have the goal of being happy and cheerful about existence. And then very often we look around at the world around us and say, well, nobody could be happy in this place. We look at the dirty dishes in the sink, and the car needing a coat of paint, and the fact that we need a new gas heater, we need a new coat, we need new shoes, or we just like to have better shoes, and say, well, how could anybody possibly be happy when actually he can't have everything he wants? He is unable to do all the things he'd like to do, and therefore this environment doesn't permit a person to be as happy as he could be. Well, I'll tell you a funny thing, a lot of philosophers have said this many, many times, but the truth of the matter is that all happiness you'll ever find lies in you. You remember when you were maybe 5 years old and you went out in the morning and you looked at the day and it was a very, very beautiful day. You looked at flowers and they were very beautiful flowers. 25 years later, you get up in the morning, you take a look at the flowers, they're wilted. The day isn't a happy day. Well, what's changed? You know, they are the same flowers. It's the same world. Something must have changed. Well, probably it was you. Actually, a little child derives all of his pleasure in life from the grace he puts upon life. He waves a magic hand and turns all manner of interesting things into being out in the society. Where does he do this? He goes down, he looks at the cop. Here's this big, strong brute of a man riding this iron steed up and down. Boy, he'd like to be a cop. Yes, sir, he'd sure like to be a cop. 25 years later, he looks at that cop riding up and down, checking his speedometer, and says, "Doggone these cops. Oh, what's changed here? Has the cop changed? No, just the attitude toward the cop." One's attitude toward life makes every possible difference in one's living. You know, you don't have to study 1,000 ancient books to discover that fact, but sometimes it needs to be pointed out again. But life doesn't change so much as you. The day when you stop building your own environment, when you stop building your own surroundings, when you stop waving a magic hand and gracing everything around you with magic and beauty, things cease to be magical. Things cease to be beautiful. Well, maybe you've just neglected somewhere back in the last few years to wave that magic hand. You know, other people seek happiness in various ways. They seek it hectically. It's as though it's some sort of a mechanism that exists. It's made up. Maybe it's a little machine. Maybe it's something that's parked in a cupboard, or maybe happiness is down at the next corner. Maybe it's someplace else. They are looking for something. Well, the odd part of it is, the only time they'll ever find something is when they put it there first. Now, this doesn't seem very creditable, but it is quite true. Those people who have become unhappy about life are unhappy about life solely and completely because life has ceased to be made by them. Here we have the single difference in a human being. We have that human being who is unhappy, miserable, and isn't getting along in life, who is sick, who doesn't see brightness. Life is handling, running, changing, making him. And here we have somebody who's happy, who's cheerful, who's strong, who finds there is something worth doing in life. What do we discover in this person? We find out that he is making life. Now there's actually the single difference. Are you making life, or is life making you? And when we go into this, we find out that a person has stopped making life because he himself has decided that life cannot be made. Some failure, some small failure, maybe not graduating with the same class, maybe that failure that had to do with not marrying quite the first man or woman who came along and seemed desirable. Maybe the failure of having lost a car or just some minor thing in life started this attitude. The person looked around one day and said, "Well, I've lost." And after that, life makes him. He doesn't make life anymore. Well, this would be a very dreadful situation if nothing could be done about it. But the fact of the matter is, it's the easiest problem of all the problems man faces. Changing himself and changing the attitudes of those around him. It's very, very easy to change somebody else's attitude. Yet, you were totally dependent upon other people's attitudes. Somebody's attitude toward you may make or break your life. Did it ever occur to you that your home holds together? Probably because of the attitude the other person has toward you. Well, so there's two problems here. you have to change two attitudes. One, your attitude toward somebody else, and two, their attitude toward you. Well, are there ways to do these things? Yes, fortunately, there are. For many, many, many centuries, man has desired to know how to change the mind and condition of himself and his fellows. Actually, man hadn't accumulated enough information to do this up to relatively few years ago. We're living in a very fast-paced world. We're living in a world where magic is liable to occur at any time, and has. Man now understands a great many things about the universe he lives in, which he never understood before. And amongst the things which he now understands is the human mind. The human mind is not an unsolved problem. 19th century psychology did not solve the problem. That doesn't mean that it hasn't been solved. In modern times, the most interesting miracles are taking place all across this country and across the other continents of Earth. And what do these miracles consist of? They consist of people becoming well. It consists of people who were unhappy becoming happy once more. It consists of abolishing the danger inherent in many of the illnesses and in many of the conditions of man. And yet the answer has been with man all the time. Man has been able to reach out and find this answer, but perhaps man himself had to change. Perhaps he had to come up into modern times to find out that the physical universe was not composed of demons and ghosts, to outlive his superstitions, to outlive the ignorance of his forebears. Perhaps he had to do everything, including invent the atom bomb, before he could find himself. Well, he has pretty well mastered the physical universe now. The physical universe is to him now rather a pawn. He can do many things with it. And having conquered that, he can now conquer himself. The truth of the matter is, he has conquered himself. Scientology came about because of man's increased knowledge of energy. Man became possessed of more information about energy than he had ever had before in all of his history. And amongst that, he came into possession of information about the energy which is his own mind. The body is an energy mechanism. Naturally, a person who cannot handle energy could not handle a body. He would be tired. He would be upset. He'd be unhappy. As he looks all around him, he finds nothing but energy. If he knew a great deal about energy, particularly the energy of himself, the energy that made him think, the energy that was himself, and the space which surrounded him, he, of course, would know himself. And that, in the final essence, has been his goal for many thousands of years, to know himself. Scientology has made it possible for him to do so.
Guru, it's interesting that a few days ago when Yogi Ramesh did his own speech, I was very interested, in what he said, because he is able to create any kind of feelings, just putting there, and that was the same thing that scientifically was discovered by Hubble, so that you put there something and you will have it. You shouldn't wait for anything. You put there, and just to laugh as a Yogi Ramesh does every day, you put there your own feeling, regardless what the environment is telling you to be. It's very interesting. And so it's very true. It's very true. These things can be found in the environment as a truth, actually.
Messi is already in the meeting. Yogi, if you are able to join, just join. Make a few comments. That will be wonderful. I see Reverend Chris is here.
Yeah, back in November.
Reverend Chris.
Should have said
See, August.
Maybe it was August.
They're having conversation. Marla, anything else to add?
Just that, I've been interested in multi-religions like you've been teaching, and I find that there's so many common elements and beliefs or principles, really, but should be no surprise. We're all human. We're, no matter which way you come, no matter how you get on the mountain, you're going to all get on the path eventually. So, there's so much that's the same. And also just the knowing of the self. I feel that many of the ancient and indigenous and ancient cultures, ancient religions, ancient belief systems have given us that wisdom already. And so finding it, I don't know, I have a conflict with that, with modern man and wisdom.
So I'll say in Indian philosophies, they always call Shastra that exactly mean of science. The Shastra, the word, that way of learning. Even they have a Tarka Shastra, argument, a science of arguments. My grandmother specialized in that area in Sanskrit when she studied her master's. Those days, only master's is highest learning process, not PhD those days. No PhD, master's, So they specialize in that area. So they ask questions, they argue, two people will argue, and one person will give the answer, then they will ask question to the other person. And this is the way they learn it. It's a healthy argument rather than a fight and show the ego. It's totally different. So this is the way they learn most of the knowledge in the olden times. That changed now. It's totally different now. So a lot of people don't believe. If somebody is saying, my father's name is Thomas Thankappan. Okay. Thankappan is his first name, Thomas is father's name. So I take my father's name as my last name, not Thomas. We won't carry grandparents' name, we carry father's name. My mom took after marriage, she had her mother's name as her last name. She never took my father's name after marriage. You see that difference? She had her individuality, So she stay with her name, that's fine for her. And nobody bother her. Even my father didn't bother her. So certain areas they have a wisdom. What you want to learn, fine. Certain places different. They will force students to learn certain things from childhood. And most of the time when they learn what they learn from the childhood, they cannot change it in the future because their mindset come like that. We should give openness to children when they grow up so they can learn more things and they will have more questions. We have to answer to their, sometimes we think stupid questions. Actually, some brilliant questions they ask, So I used to ask my mom, where is the God? Who created God? And everybody look at what is wrong with this kid, or everything written in the Bible or in the Gita, everything written. So mom will look at me, why did he ask question? Because God created us, so who created God? Where is the origin of the universe? These questions we ask. And most of the time parents will get upset. They don't know what to ask. Nobody knows where is the origin. Written in textbooks of the religion doesn't mean that it's the real knowledge. And very hard to find. Even two people are having a conflict, end up in the court. Judge cannot find out what is the real problem. So they go with the evidence, then make the decision. Actually, the real stuff both won't tell in the court. So many things I face with my friends' situation in different court cases. Sometimes husband and wife, they have a conflict. They're just blaming each other in a very rigorous way. But actually, real story is totally different. So this is very hard to find what is the truth unless we put ourselves in a deep meditative state to go travel beyond any of this limitation and find out ourselves. The masters can only guide them to grow. They cannot go inside their head and make them to understand things. They can share their energy to the student, not more than that. So each person have a responsibility to go and dig in and find the truth. So
I would love Guru to add and confirm what you just said, because there is a lot of people, a lot of different religion, a lot of different organizations and entities, and many of them, they are telling the people we have the truth. So now we cannot have a different truth. The truth is just one. And who has the truth? That will be the question. The truth is in Christianity, on Catholic or Buddhist or Hindu or Muslim. Where is the truth? So it's a very interesting thing, because obviously the quest for the truth is also generate conflict between people, the ideas. So what Elon Abba said, his own viewpoint is that the truth exists in you, and what you just said, the truth because the truth is already in you. And you need just, you can say, a pathway or tools so that allowed you to discover the exact truth. But at the very end, anything is true only because it's true for you. And that's all, basically. Because when you gain, the truth about yourself, as many people said all the time, you gain that certainty, and therefore you gain happiness, because it's very simple, actually. And as I said several times, when people ask me what is Scientology, people ask me all the time, and I said Scientology is not the truth. Scientology is no more than a tools, or a way, tools basically, that you use to find out the truth of yourself. And that is the main lesson that all the philosophers in these thousands and thousands of years, starting from the Veda, provided to the people, that the truth is in you and you have to discover. Is a pathway that sometimes requires a lot of courage, and when you start the pathway to find out the truth, is a pathway that you have to I say in English, you have to walk through until the end. You cannot leave at half of the pathway. You have to be capable and have the courage to go until the end and find out definitely the final truth that you will find again, as I said, in yourself.
I met so many yogis. They leave the family and worldly life and travel all over India, end up in Himalayas and end up in the caves, and they go to one state, and after some time they leave even that cave. They realize even that is not enough for them. You know, I met some people never eat food, not drinking water, nothing. Years and years they are sitting and meditating. Interesting. Some people have a lot of different types of capability to show miracles, different things. Walking on the fire, walking on the water, they do different things. In the end, they go to another state. It's very interesting to see different things.
I think in Judaism, you come down from the mountain and walk with the people. And it's being with the people in interacting in mitzvahs, and making good, that we have tikkun olam, the healing. So out of the cave, into the streets, into the home. I think L. Ron Hubbard said the same thing.
Oh yeah, but all philosophers, the basic concept, the principle are common from any philosopher. And actually, as I said, man accumulate so many knowledge in the last 10,000 years that obviously sooner or later someone could, come up and put together this knowledge, piece of knowledge that came from different sources. But there was a lot of truth all over, these 10,000 years. It was just matter to bring together this knowledge in such a way, practical way, that the man on the street, without 10 years or 20 years of study, can understand and use it to improve their own life, whatever they want to do. Someone could want to be just a better father, or a mother want to be just a better mother. Totally fine, Anybody has their own purpose, and they have the right to pursue their own purpose. It's just a matter that people try to understand how to achieve that goals. And this knowledge, the good news that we have to, as a religious people, we have to tell to everybody that this knowledge exists. Man has been able to put together this knowledge. And this knowledge doesn't belong to any church or any entity. This knowledge belongs to people. And people has the right to have this knowledge. But as I said before, you cannot force anybody to know something. It's their own decision, and that is the freedom.
So person with knowledge from the universe, the owner of this knowledge is the universe, even not people. Because we are absorbing from the universe, surroundings, right? So when our energy is flowing and synchronizing with the universe, automatically universe will flow to us. Because we are also part of the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that has to be synchronized. But when blockage happens, it's very hard to get the knowledge. When blockage, when we are able to remove it, it automatically comes. It's like a conductor, and it's like a negative and positive. Electricity is coming, you put a wooden piece there, it will stop it. Take the wooden piece out, it will start moving. So that's the thing we all, in the yogic principle, we say, just connect with the universe. Means you connect with everybody. That's the way it is, including animals, plants, all the things around us. And we can travel. Mentally, we sit, physically we sit here, mind will be somewhere else, We'll connect. That's the way it's supposed to be. Maybe within 5,000 years or 6,000 years, we may lose our capability to increase energy because of the behavior habits in our life. Look, when we take so much chemical food, we won't able to digest, energy won't flow very well. When you take fresh fruits and vegetables, it will help us to digest very well, prana will increase. Even look at the Bible, in the beginning, there is no food for Adam and Eve because they have the energy, you know. Then slowly it's moving to fruits and vegetables, then go to grains, then go to the meat. That's the way it is. So, and they are saying, according to the Bible, you see, Adam and Eve lived approximately 930 years. And it's cut down, each generation cut down the lifespan, end up in 120. You know, I met Swami Bhuva, he was 123. He left his body that time. You know, some people live more than 100. I met a lot of them. So the way how we practice our day-to-day life, that is very important. Not taking everything negative way in our mind, fighting other people. It will create a lot of toxins in our body. You know? So when people are happy, toxins are less. You know, you create a positive atmosphere around you, and when people come to you, they are happy too. That's the way spiritual beings supposed to behave. A happiest person, you know, tolerative person, accommodative person, lovable man. The main thing is love. If child is getting crazy, means child is not getting real love from the parents or the siblings. They have a tension in the family, and child cannot behave or learn it. If there's no love, they cannot learn it properly. So you had to love everyone in a proper manner. You know, that's very important.
Guru, there is one thing that you said several times, and I wanted to point it out as an important thing, because you said several times there is a sort of blockage that prevent people to get knowledge. And what you said is quite truth. You know, there is something that prevent people. We are not going to describe in detail what they are because it's too long, but it's very true, you know. And because all the knowledge is within you, the question will become why I cannot find out the knowledge that I possess. You know, what is prevent me and any human being, what prevent any human being to possess and know, you know, be aware of the knowledge that is within you. And actually that was the original question that Ronaba asked to himself, you know, to find out what is this blockage, what prevent people to know themselves, you know, what prevent people to not know, you know, what you know is, it's so, it seems play with the words, you know, but, you know, it's very interesting. And actually, for those that read the book Dianetics, they know that there exists that blockage, but that blockage can be handled and remove that blockage. The knowledge that is in you, you just open the lid of the pot, you say, oh my goodness, I have all this knowledge, you know, and I didn't remember. You know, very interesting. So remove the blockage, as you said, is probably one of the most important things. So just to regain the knowledge you possess.
Everybody gets birth and die, and most of the people cannot figure out what will happen after the death. So soul is coming to the body, and we are in this body will decay, and soul has to leave. Soul cannot stay there, and we don't know where soul is going. Move around, maybe living in another planet, you know. Even we don't know, soul is going to the sun, say hi son, how are you doing, and coming back. We don't know anything. So this is beyond our limit. So saints, they are capable to know what was the past life, what will happen in the future. They know this. That's why I said the prana start working on them, then they will know what is going on. And those people are not going to fight with anybody. They are in a different state. They are not looking for anybody to criticize them or anybody to praise them. They don't need anything. You know, they don't need anybody's proclamation, citation, acknowledgement, award, Nobel Prize, nothing. They are in a different state. You know,
They are.
they are. And they are not limited to one religion or a ethnicity or culture. A lot of great people are around the world. They just sit in silence. You don't need,
Anyway, because Marla before was talking about conflict, I put in the chat a video that anybody can see later, you know. And as I said, I wanted to remember the viewer, please do not believe to anything that you are going to read or listen from from actually anybody. You have to experience from yourself and gain certainty with your experience and with your own observation. That is very, very important. Very, very important.
that part I have to acknowledge him is a good teacher, because most of the great teachers, they tell the student, do not believe what I say. You go and find yourself about the
Absolutely.
Those who come
So
to
important.
the camps also will tell them. We teach them these things. If you want to find out your own way, go and find out.
Yeah.
We are not going to control you. It's not our job. We are the guides. This is the way. If you feel it's fine. Well, even exercise, some poses for some people is very easy. For some people it's very impossible to do those, you know. So whatever they can accommodate, you know, implement in their life, do it. Doing something is better than nothing. Right? So, anyone else to ask any questions? Reverend Chris, how are you doing? Yeah. Geeta,
Namaste,
doing pretty
Guruji, and
good.
namaste, everyone.
Oh,
Namaste.
yeah. Chris going, asking question or comments? Reverend Chris? No. Okay. Then Geeta.
Actually, how much knowledge one acquire, it doesn't matter, but always one should be very humble and free from ego. Then that is true knowledge. If you have knowledge and you are very egoistic person, I have so much knowledge, I'm very knowledgeable, that is not good. That is the main reason of this war and everything.
Right. The thing is, when a person have a real love towards themselves, towards others, there's no ego play games there. Cannot play. That's the beauty about Jesus. He just talk about only about the love. You know, a mother never want child to be getting bad situation. Even there's a hard situation going on, if the fire in the house, child will mother will take the child first, try to save the child before the mother's life. That's a real love. You know. Yes, Peter.
So thank you, everybody. It's been a great session to listen to. Good to see some old friends. Hello, Marla. How are you?
Hi.
But the one thing I wanted to add here is that if we're talking about science and spirituality, scientific method accounts for new data showing up later and being incorporated and having views on whatever the topic is updated. And I know, Guruji, you've said a number of times that what we need to do is if something's not making sense, or things have to be upgraded and updated. So that's that would be my only comment. I have to run right now. I'm sitting in a parking lot in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I have a train to catch.
Have fun.
So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you on some of these future things. Thanks again, Guruji, for hosting these things.
Yeah, thank you.
So my view is science and philosophy has to go together. You cannot separate that.
I have to, my family is very scientific and mathematical. My brother did his he's doing his PhD in cosmology and mathematics at Yale. And so he just finished the mathematics, and he's telling me, you know, they all go to philosophy. Now he's taking philosophy courses. He says mathematicians take philosophy, Marla. And so it's really interesting. He started a chair at the University of Toronto for a mathematics department, and said that it's mathematics is going to be the solution. And I think in some ways, my nephew is a brilliant mathematician. My uncle was a brilliant mathematician. And I think in many ways, there's a sense of truth there. Because if you look at Einstein, it's really his formulas, you know, and it's their analytics and science and their ability to see the mathematics in our world. I think that we find a sense of truth.
I'm happy you brought
I agree.
Einstein's name here. I remember Swami Bhuva had a discussion with Einstein, and Swami said, "You are a wonderful scientist. So how come you can smoke cigar and destroy your own body?" You know what he did? He stopped smoking. we had to respect our body, right? Because whatever we eat, whatever, even drinking water itself, if it is not a pure water, it will block our energy flow. Whatever we think, always stressed out, it will block it. You know, so many things are related with this, and it's very hard to live in pure form of lifestyle in the busiest lifestyle in New York or other parts of the world. It's very hard. Sometimes people eat too much and it won't digest properly. Sometimes people don't have enough food. Still, when they eat, it won't digest properly. Imbalance of the endocrine systems are there. And so many factors are around us. Yeah. And it's very hard to balance everything. Anything else?
Many things, many.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, when you talk about this subject, I think that, you know, everybody are extremely interested, because I think that from thousand and thousand a year, man ask himself the same question. Where I come from, where I'm going, who I am, what is the purpose of life, are always the same question. And personally, I work out a sort of concept for myself. And I said, wherever there is questions, is because before there was the answer and you forgot. Let me explain another way. So basically, you ask yourself something, question, only because you forgot the answer. But the answer is in you. Otherwise, you are not going even to ask the question, you know, because you know already. Is a sort of, how you say in English? Yeah, wisdom. Is the wisdom that exists in you that made you, prompt you to ask the question, who I am? Oh my goodness. You know, where I'm going. Guru before was talking about afterlife and before life, past life, stuff like that. Actually, it's very interesting, because on the website, in the web, you find a lot of stories of people that you know, left the body and see the body from outside, you know, and then return to the body and stuff like that. And if you look at the description of this phenomenon from psychiatry viewpoint, they say, oh, it's just an illusion. But the people had this experience, you know, it's incredible, real experience. And there is even story of people that find out their own grave, you know, later. There is a beautiful story I want to tell you, because it's very nice. There was a very young girl, 5 years old, and one day entered in a church and talked with the priest in the church and said, and she said, I'm worried about my children and my husband. So it's a children of 5 years old. How is possible, you know? But this priest was not stupid, you know, he listened, you know, and the children, this girl, describe exactly the name of the husband, the name of the children, the address where they are living, you know, and was a completely different city where this little girl, 5 years old, never lived. So the priest went to this place, to the address where the girl described, you know, and he find out the name of the husband was the same, the name of the children, you know, everything was perfect, was exactly how the girl said. So some weeks later, the girl come back to the church, and the priest talked to the girl and said, I met your husband, I met your children, and your husband remarried with another woman, and this woman is taking care of your children. So the girl said, thank you very much, I feel relief now, and she left. You know, these are stories, but there are hundreds of these stories you can find. So there is a quote unquote not scientific explanation about that, about the simple fact that you, as a spiritual being, you are an immortal spiritual being, as many people said in this 1,000 of years, you are living in the body, and when the body got old or killed or sick and doesn't work anymore, you just change the body, you take another one. That would be the very simplicity of the explanation, you know. But again, you cannot believe because someone said to you that you are a spiritual being that live in the body. You shouldn't believe to this kind of thing. You should find out by yourself.
So this is my observation. Even a thought coming to your mind, that coming from the universe, right? We call this is as a cell phone, right? We gave the name. In the another planet, there may be another name for the cell phone. We don't know, do they have a high quality cell phone rather than this type of cell phone here? We don't have any idea because universe is unlimited space. We have limitation to find out. We think sun is the big thing around it. So many suns are around. You know, this is beyond our limitation. What thoughts come to our mind, it is coming from the universe. So sometimes we forget things. Thank God we forget. Otherwise, think about we are remembering everything from our first day. You know, so many good and bad memories. If you remember everything, it will be a mess. So we forget a lot of things. Sometimes our relatives or friends talk about old stories. Then we remember. Yeah. You know, sometimes we forget. Yeah, I don't remember that. After you'll think it, then it come out. Yeah, it happened. So this life is very interesting. We never know how it will flow. You know,
The mysteries of the universe.
it is.
Well, you guys are fascinating. Thank you for
Yeah.
the discussion. I'm just
Yeah, we
wonderful.
had a wonderful discussion today. Thank you, Reverend Massimo Parrino,
My pleasure.
leading the program,
Thank you.
and thank you, Marla, joining. Long time to see you.
Thank
And I
you.
will put my, for everybody, I will put my email address in the chat for anybody that, you know, I have a policy personally, which say never go to bed without know one new person every day. And, you know, and I love this thing because I'm enriched as a person to the degree that I knew new people, establish a communication line, you know, and share knowledge and share just the pleasure to talk with someone itself. For me, it's the greatest pleasure in life, you know, that to know something from others. So I will put my email address there and my phone so anybody can reach me and ask me anything. And again, to the Guru, thank you very much for your this opportunity. It was really, really, really appreciated.
Tomorrow we have some people from India also speaking, and one pastor from one of the church in which state is that? Somewhere closer to New York.
Oh, okay.
And
I see.
Sunday we have other people are joining, and Monday few doctors are going to join, having dialogue.
Okay.
Crisis, different things going on. The 28th is our last program, 3-hour program with all the music, dance, our final gala party. So
When is that?
that's the last day, 28th of the February.
Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks for all the great conversation, and I hope to check in again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Have a good day, everybody, and see you again.
See you.
Yes.